Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and as you can see, it is another exciting day here, because we get to look at the very first of the 2019 lineup from Schleich, and it is their Spinosaurus. I will say at first glance that the actual paint is a bit darker than I was expecting, especially in the neck region and face region. I didn't think it was going to be quite such a dark black, but it is a very dark looking, almost somewhat glossy looking black coloration, and I'm not really sure quite how I feel about the very dark glossy type look. I'm not a very big fan of a gloss being on the actual skin of my dinosaur figures, but I mean, I guess that's what taking a closer look is for, so let's go ahead and do that now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, again, like I said, it's a very, very dark coloration that they've got all over here, very dark black, which I'm not really a big fan of. I honestly would have preferred a lighter coloration, but also because it's so dark, you really have a harder time making out the actual sculpt in detail, which is one of what I believe to be Schleich's strong points, is that they usually have a lot of very small, minute details in the sculpting, and that's something that you can't really make out too well with this figure, simply because this paint is just so dark on the neck and the head that it just kind of eliminates the ability to see that. But you can, if you really turn it, you can really make out the detail, but that is one downside. And another immediate downside that I can say that I don't like is the teeth. They absolutely look horrendous as far as the way the paint is applied. It again has an articulated jaw like most Schleich carnivores do have, but honestly, those teeth are really, really sloppily painted, like horribly sloppily painted. I mean, there is just some teeth appear to be missing some paint, and other teeth just have paint that's run down all over the gums. Up here we've got some of the red from the face that has run onto the actual teeth. There's a few teeth in the hook part of the jaw that doesn't have any paint other than the red paint from the face. So overall, the teeth and the entire mouth area is kind of a disaster on this figure, which is really upsetting because this is the Schleich figure I was looking forward to the most for 2019. But that is definitely a very big letdown as far as this figure goes. I do like the coloration on the inside of the mouth. I'm not a big fan of that super bright red tongue. Again, I don't really think that that's very realistic looking, and also kind of takes away from the figure, but it could be worse. It's not that bad, just something that I definitely think could have been better if it was more of a natural coloration. Again, it as usual has very bulky teeth like most Schleich figures do when it comes to their carnivores. That is the very typical standard for Schleich, but the fact that the paint is just so sloppy all over these teeth is really upsetting to me, and definitely a huge letdown as far as this figure goes. If you take a look at the detail of the face, it is actually really, really nicely detailed, beautiful. As far as the sculpting that goes into it, especially the lower jaw, you can see very nice sculpt work. I think the nostrils are sculpted very nicely. Even the detail around the nostrils looks great. The crest up on the top of the head there looks very good. And the eye is painted really nicely. And you can see as I turn it, there's a very nice gloss and a nice shine to it that really makes that eye look very realistic. There's no sloppiness, at least when it comes to the paint on the eye, which is definitely another big plus when it comes to such a huge downside. I don't know why Schleich can use such a beautiful gloss on the eyes, but they don't put any gloss on the inside of the mouth. That's something I think Schleich should probably look into in the future as well. And on the opposing side, again, you can see the eye is also really nicely painted and very beautifully glossed on this side as well. The detail that you can see here in the little skin flap of the inside of the mouth also looks really quite good. And the overall sculpt and detail on the face and entire head sculpt is actually really nice. It's just got some poorly applied paint. I do like the variation of color though. There is lots of different tones and subtle changes in coloration all over, but I really would have preferred that they hadn't included this black and maybe just like a different variation of brown or something. I feel like would have definitely made this look a lot better. Maybe like a burnt umber type brown and a lighter brown for the body would have been a lot better, but I guess we can deal with the black. Again, it's just so dark that it kind of drowns out the detail. As we start to come down the neck though, you can see that the neck sculpt is really beautiful. There's incredible amounts of detail and sculpt, as with most, if not all, Schleich figures, except for maybe the Acrocanthosaurus, which was just awful. But you can see some very beautiful sculpt work all over in the neck and the throat area. And then we come down here into the shoulder. You see the shoulder blade is very nicely elaborated. We run out into those beautiful Spino hands. Very short hands, but they are sculpted very nicely. The arms overall are really nicely sculpted as well. There doesn't really appear to be too much of a sloppiness when it comes to the paint of the nails. A little bit. I guess you could see that the paint has actually run up onto the fingers here and there, which isn't that bad from a step away. You don't notice it too much, but it's definitely something that you'll take note to when it's up close. But the details does still look really nice, and the sculpt looks really nice. Again, one thing I am a big fan of with Schleich is the fact that they use a beautiful dark wash most times on their figures, and as you can see, the Spinosaurus has that beautiful dark wash. Really makes it look like it's a very real looking dinosaur, very alive, which is definitely a plus. As you come back into the stomach, you can see that the sculpt and detail does look very nice, almost crocodilian in my opinion, with the way that some of it looks, but it does look beautiful. I'm not super sold on these stripes that are kind of here on the side of the body. I'm not really sure why, but it, like the rest of the body, although it's really dark like I mentioned with this dark black, kind of appears to look like the color of the skin, but these stripes kind of stick out and look more like paint than natural body color. But from a little step back, I mean, it's not a big deal. If you look at these stripes here, and then you compare them to these stripes that, I mean, I know that these are much finer stripes here compared to these ones back here. These are more of just a nice airbrushing, but I feel like the way they've applied it back in the back of the tail is much more natural and realistic looking compared to these stripes up here. Something about them I'm just not super sold on. It's not the worst thing in the world, and definitely not the worst part of this Spinosaurus, since the teeth is definitely the worst. If you take a look up here at the sail, and as I turn it, since it's such dark coloration, it's a little hard to make note of, but the detail is actually really beautifully done. There's just an incredible amount of awesome sculpt work that's gone into it. And even up here at the top where you can kind of see that very dark black color, there's also a hint of that burnt umber brown, which I think would have definitely made this look a lot better. So they did include some of that burnt umber, and even down here actually you can get a little idea of some burnt umber that's been included, which is just that darker brown. There are some very nice tones that have been put into this. There is all sorts of browns that you can see that just very subtly change colors, and then of course that black, that very dark black that's all over the place, which is very nice to see, again making it look much more realistic. Then we get to the rear leg here. You can see that hip bone, very nicely elaborated, protruding from the skin. You can see all sorts of skin folds. You can get an idea of the skin being scrunched up a little bit as this right rear leg is stepping up into the stomach a little. Beautiful muscle tone here, especially in the calf. And then we come down here into the foot. And I think that the nails on this foot are painted a little nicer than they were on the other foot, on the front foot. Again, on that far foot as well, it looks really nice the way the nails look from over here. Beautiful dew claw, also painted very nicely. And then we come up into the tail. Again, that very nice sculpt work that's been included. Just looks beautiful, and then it kind of gets from these smaller scales to much larger scales, which really look very crocodilian, along with the rest of the tail the further out we go. And the paint applied all over the tail, there's just so many different shades and hints of other colorations of different browns and dark blacks and stuff all over the tail. It just really looks real to me and looks very natural, so that is a great area of this figure. The overall coloration of the actual sail also looks really nice, and the sculpting of the sail also looks really beautiful in my opinion. Definitely a very nice area of this figure as well. And then we come back over here. Again, you can get a very good idea of the beautiful sculpt of the neck. As I turn it, you can see all sorts of osteoderms and different cracks and creases of the skin as we run down the neck. And there's that beautiful shoulder blade again sticking out. Very nicely sculpted arm. Look at the incredible detail of the minor little scales and stuff in the arm. And you can also see some nice folding of the skin in the joint right there as it is bent. Coming back up into the stomach, you can see all sorts of beautiful scales that's been sculpted into it. Very nice work, some skin folds here. As we get closer to the left rear leg, you can also see the skin pulling away from the body a little bit there as this leg is stretched back. The foot sculpt is also really quite beautiful. And then we run up here into the leg. We look at the muscle tone, looks very nice as well. Some more very nice skin folding and stuff. The skin's stretched a little bit here in the back of the leg. If we take a look up here at the sail looks great on this side as well. I really love that up here at the top of the sail you can kind of see some cracks and stuff that are running down the upper part of the sail. Looks very nice. And the coloration overall does look really good, even though I'm not super sold on the very dark black up here on the neck. I think from the neck back, when you get to like the shoulder area, it really looks beautiful, aside from these stripes that maybe aren't the most realistic looking stripes. It almost kind of looks like there's just like drops of paint running down, almost like raindrops, which is kind of strange, but again, it's not that bad. It definitely looks pretty good. Just could have been done a little more of a natural type of a way. And then we get back into this tail. Again, those beautiful airbrushed stripes, and that incredibly sculpted tail looks awesome the whole way out. And taking a look at the underside, you can see that's got that very nice red throat that really gives it that striking look, and the overall sculpting and detail the whole way through looks, again, very crocodilian, but very nicely done. I am definitely a big fan of the sculpt of this figure. Beautiful chest muscles and stuff there. Definitely a big fan of the sculpt, but maybe not so much of a fan of the paint. The paint is really nice in some areas and not so nice in other areas, and really bad in other areas, but overall it's not that bad. As I mentioned, it does have an articulated jaw, and the articulated jaw works perfectly. There's no problems with that whatsoever. I feel like the overall paint scheme, again, I'm not a big fan of the black that's on it. I mean, it would have looked good with black, but just not such a dark, glossy looking kind of a black. But at the same time, it does look really nice in some areas, and the overall appearance has such a striking look, very crocodilian, like I mentioned like 4 times already. But at the same time, that red paint on the face kind of gives it a little bit more of a striking look, makes it just jump out at you and pop. And it does look very nice, just some areas I feel like could have been improved. As far as the size goes on the Spinosaurus, from the tail to the head, you are looking at just a little bit under 12 inches, so a little under a foot, or about 30 centimeters. And for a height, the highest point is probably the sail back here, so you're looking about 4 3/4 inches, or about 12 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is the Papo T-Rex, and you can see that the Spinosaurus is actually pretty big, but not super huge. It's definitely a fairly large Schleich figure, but as you can see, the Papo Rex is a bit bigger than the Spinosaurus, which is not the case in real life if these were actually to scale with each other, which they are not. But again, it should give you a pretty good idea of the size of the Spinosaurus. Definitely a pretty decently sized figure, but not anything that's just overly huge. Even with the dark coloration on the neck and the head, that very dark black, I still think it looks really good and is definitely a beautiful looking and beautiful rendition of Spinosaurus. Again, the teeth are an absolute disaster, as is basically the entire inside of the mouth. I don't like the tongue color at all. I really don't like the teeth. I've never been a very big fan of those big bulky teeth that Schleich has, but I let them pass just because I know they are aimed at children for the most part, so you don't want anybody getting stabbed by the dinosaur's teeth. So I can go ahead and forgive that area, but the sloppiness of the paint on the teeth is just something that is terrible looking in my opinion, and something I cannot forgive because it just looks really, really rough. But then you have other areas that have really beautiful paint applied, like the eyes that have that perfect gloss and that very beautiful paint that's really applied to pretty much perfection in my opinion. And a lot of the body paint in general looks very natural and very real. There are all sorts of different tones of coloration, and that's another big plus for me as far as figures like this go. It really makes it look more like a living animal, more so than a model or toy. But then there are areas of the body that have paint that I feel like isn't so natural, like those stripes, which actually, looking at the stripes on this side, are really mismatched compared to the other side. You can see that they're just primarily stripes all over on this side, but if we turn it around, the stripes on the other side kind of look a little different to me. They have more like a raindroppy type of a look compared to the way they look on the opposing side. I don't know if that's just my Spinosaurus. I mean, they're similar, but they're not really exactly the same. That may just be my Spinosaurus. I don't know. Maybe you guys, if you order it, will get one that has more consistent paint. But again, I'm not really too sure. It looks a little weird to me. But regardless, I think that it is a very nice Spinosaurus, and it's cool to see Schleich take a crack at a quadrupedal Spinosaurus, something that I hadn't previously expected out of them. So again, very, very cool. And it's the start of the 2019 reviews, which I really only have 3 as of right now because I did not get the Dimetrodon or Giganotosaurus because I really don't have too much of an interest in either of those. But I figured I would start strong with one that everybody was really looking forward to with the Spinosaurus, and it doesn't look bad, but it's definitely not as good as I expected. So if you guys do want to buy this figure, I will throw a link in the description to everythingdinosaur.com where you can go ahead and purchase one for yourself if you would like, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.